If you're a beginner to intermediate developer struggling to learn JavaScript, maybe ChatGPT can help. So in this video, we're going to kill two birds with one stone. We're going to walk through the process of building a full stack app that integrates with the OpenAI API, and you'll be able to use that to explain JavaScript snippets when you get stuck. What's up, everyone? My name is James Q. Quick, and I have been using ChatGPT for various things multiple times a day for the past month or two, probably. And a great use case, I think, is being able to explain JavaScript code snippets to you to tell you what's happening and why, and give you some additional context as to what's going on. I think this is a great place to start when and if you get stuck, if you're kind of learning on your own or you don't have an immediate resource next to you. So selfishly, we're going to do a double dip. We're going to kill two birds with a stone by building an application so that you can learn how to integrate with the OpenAI SDK or API, and then also selfishly build that in a way that's going to help you in your learning journey. And we are going to build this application with Wix. Now with Wix, we don't have to worry about deploying and hosting, and we get a visual drag and drop interface to build our UI. And we can even write our backend logic with Wix. That's right, backend logic with Wix. So you may typically think of Wix as just the no-code builder for front-end web pages, but now they have code that you can write inside of the platform to add this full stack functionality, which is how and where we're going to integrate with the OpenAI SDK. So we'll have the ability to create a server-side script, import the OpenAI package, and then call that script from our front end. It's going to be really cool, and we'll be able to build this thing in just a couple of minutes, a full stack application that integrates with ChatGPT. Wix is also the sponsor of this video, so I can't wait for you to see how cool this product is. So that said, let's go ahead and actually dive in. All right, so the first thing you'll need to do is go to wix.com and sign up for your free account. You can use this for multiple different sites, for different projects that you want to work on, and follow along with everything that we do in this video, again, completely for free. And then we'll go to create a new site. And in this case, we specifically want to reference using Editor X instead of Wix. Now, Editor X will enable us to activate some of the developer-centric features that we'll explore in this video, which includes being able to work with our code in a local repository or a GitHub repository, and then work with that locally on our machine. So once we click, we're going to go ahead and choose Start from Scratch. So we're going to build all this stuff out from scratch and not worry about choosing a template, although they have some really awesome templates that you can use if that's what you're looking for. So we get started with kind of a blank canvas here. We can come in and change the vector art. I think earlier I searched for something relevant to programming and come down, and there was like this cool pyramid gradient triangle thing that I thought was cool. It's not like specifically code, but there it is. And then we're kind of inside of this visual builder now. And so I want to start by adding an element, and that will be just our title in here. So I'm going to title this JavaScript explained, and then I want to like kind of mix this up a little bit. So I'm going to actually put explained on a separate line, center all of this, bold this, and then make the font size for explained bigger and maybe like italics. And then we can kind of slide this up here. Now we're going to use a stack in a minute where we'll kind of group all these elements together to make sure they have good spacing and stuff. But for now, we'll just kind of throw this up there. So that looks good enough. Then I want to add a little bit extra context as to what we're doing in here. So I'm going to add a paragraph text in here below. In this case, we'll just say, need help understanding a JavaScript snippet. Paste it below to get an explanation. So that's just a little context for the user. We'll center align that, and that should be good. And so from here, we need to add an input box for the user to input their JavaScript snippet. So the most important thing we need to do to make sure we're on the same page as you're following along is come up to dev mode and turn this on. This will do two things. It'll make sure the UI that I'm following looks like what you're following, or that you're following looks like what I'm doing. And then also enables us to get to writing our custom JavaScript, which we'll get to in just a second. So from here on our inputs or on our elements, we now should have an input section if we scroll down. And so we want to do a text box, and we can kind of drag this out here and set the width on this, and then give it a decent amount of height so we can actually like paste in a reasonable JavaScript snippet. So that looks good. And then we will add a button. We're going to need our submit button when we actually want to generate the explanation for the JavaScript script. So I'm going to drag in this one. I'm going to make this be full width just to kind of match this width up here. And instead of read more, we will change this text to say, explain this JavaScript. Oh, it looks like that got rid of my P in there. Cool. So that works. And then lastly, the one additional element we'll need in here is, and let's actually make this section a little bit bigger. We'll see this kind of play out in a second. So I'm going to move these around just a bit, but we'll come back to that. And so then we want to add one more Arc browser. I'm still getting used to one more paragraph text. And this is going to be the results text. So inside of here, we'll grab a paragraph. We'll drag this, set this size in here like so, and then say results will show here. Again, we'll kind of come back to that. I want to make sure this is into this part. So what I want to do just to organize this a bit is I'm going to select each of these. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on all of these elements that we just added, and I'm going to stack them on top of each other. So that will allow us to do a couple of things. One of the things that we can do from a layout perspective is we can have a spacing in between these elements. So we can have like 20 pixels in between each element. Okay, and then I'm going to take each one of our elements inside and just make sure they align with that box, so the stack that we're in. So I'm going to drag each one of these out to make sure it fills that whole space. So let's just match each one of those. And I think we could also come in and set the width of these to 100%. So we can change each of these to match the 100% that just converted from pixels. And then this one will be 100 as well. This one will be 100, and this one also. We can also get a look at the different viewports. So here it is on kind of a medium screen and then a bigger screen. And then I think I want to take the stack here, and like on a smaller screen, we should make this bigger. This should be a bigger thing. So we'll grab, not this text, let's grab the actual stack itself. And let's set this to like 90%. There we go. So that'll fill up more of this. And then maybe on medium screens, we take up 70%. And on this one, we can have, I think 50 still looks good. So those are our DOM elements. They're now laid out on top of each other. Those are the ones that we're going to work with. And now that we have the basic UI showing, now we can actually get into this backend code. And this is where this gets really cool. So this is the ability in Wix to add not only custom JavaScript on the front end, but also backend JavaScript, which is really, really pretty mind-blowing. Now, one thing to keep in mind is we're going to start by writing code inside of the Wix editor, but near the end of this video, we're actually going to move this workflow into our own local code workflow using VS Code. So stick around to the end to see how we do that. So inside of the public and backend code, we're going to add a web module, and we're just going to call this ai.jsw. And so what this is going to do is pop open this new window where we can just paste in code, or we can write code. And so the cool thing about this is as we export a function from the backend code, we now have the ability to call that code from the front end directly. We'll see that in a second. So I'm going to paste in a snippet here for our work with OpenAI. So we'll kind of talk through this and we'll go step by step. The first thing is we're going to need a secret credential for our OpenAI API key. So here's the get secret function, and we want to get the API key for OpenAI so that we can configure the OpenAI object that we're going to work with. Now, the other thing that you recognize is that this is looking to import configuration and OpenAI API from the OpenAI NPM package, which means we need to install that. And we get to this question mark of like, how do we install packages? Well, obviously they've already thought this through. So under code packages, under NPM, we can go and install a package from NPM. And so we can just say OpenAI, install this package. I kind of like the search ability of this. Like obviously you could just run an NPM install yourself, which is fine. I like the search ability to get like the documentation and notes and stuff in here. That's actually like a pretty nice touch. So give this a second, and now that error goes away. So we're able to work with OpenAI. We've got it installed. Now we have this function where we're going to configure that and then pass in the prompt to get the completion. So we've created this explain JavaScript code function, and notice we're exporting that. That's so that from our front end, we can just call this function directly here in a minute when we get this set up. So then we go into the configuration. We'll come back to the API key in just one second, but we create our configuration in here, giving it our API key. we create the new OpenAI object, and then we call create completion. And there's different functions that you can call. There's different models that you can use. But in this case, we're just calling the text DaVinci model, and then we're telling it, we're kind of hard coding part of the request, which says, can you tell me what the output of this JavaScript code is and explain why? And then we pass in the actual code snippet. So the user is going to enter in their code snippet in the input box, press the submit button. The front end is going to make a request to the back end where it's able to handle these secret keys safely, which is good. It's going to run the actual completion, and then it's going to respond back with the response, with the actual text, and then we'll display that on the screen. So it's a pretty neat integration in here. So let's go and search really quickly for chat. I forget exactly what the website is. So chat or OpenAI API. So this website is openai.com/blog/OpenAI-API. Basically, I'm trying to get to the dashboard for the API. And so I'm already signed. Actually, maybe I'm not. I need to log in here with my Google account. And I've already created my account. You can create your account again on here for free. I've since gone past my free trial. So I am now on a pay per use example inside of using OpenAI. But you can do all this stuff for free. And I just now got out of the free tier after like a month of using this. So, and then inside of API keys, you'll need to create a new API key, and then you'll want to copy that and then follow along as we add this into our dashboard. So how do you manage secrets inside of Wix? Well, there's a secret manager. So you can store your API keys safely to use in your code. So we'll open this up and we'll want this to match the key, to match this name. So what do we say? OpenAI API key. And so we'll go ahead and add this credential inside of the secrets manager dashboard so we can store that securely. So we'll go into the stored secret. I'm going to paste in the key, and then I'm also going to paste in the API key. So the name of the secret that we're storing, and then the value, and then you'll click save, and that thing should be good to go. So now that API key is available for us to use in our backend, and we have the backend here ready to go. Now, it's interesting, if you want to look more into what all things you can do on the backend, there's a ton of different packages in here and a ton of like database integrations and all sorts of stuff that you can do. This is just one example. So spend some time kind of exploring what all code things you can do to build fully functioning full stack applications with Wix by just kind of exploring, and I'll have a link to documentation you can check out as well. But that's the front end. That's what we're looking to do with the front end, which is perfect. Or excuse me, that is the back end. That was not the front end. We're now going to move into the front end. So one of the things we want to do is be able to access a couple of these elements from their IDs. So I'm going to open up, I guess, this part, the code part. I'm going to select this text box, and I'm going to call this first one. We're giving them IDs so we can access them inside of JavaScript. And we're going to call this the code input. So we'll just give it an ID of code input. And then let's kind of move on down. Let's go to the button. We'll call this submit button. All right. And the last thing is we want the results text. So results text. So we're giving them IDs that we can reference inside of our JavaScript. And then now that we have our button selected, notice we have the ability to click. We have the ability to click to add click handlers and other handlers. So we can add a click handler. We'll call this handle submit. And now inside of here, we can kind of use this jQuery syntax to interact with our DOM element. So one of the things we want to do is disable the button while we are submitting. So while we're waiting for the response to come back from the backend, we can disable the button. And so I can take $ and then W, and then inside of here, kind of type in the name of something that we're looking to reference. So notice it gives us IntelliSense, which makes it super easy. And I can call submit button dot and then disable, for example. I could also change the label of the button to something like loading. So if we wanted to do that, we could do $ submit and then dot label equals loading ... And then from here, we want to get a reference to the actual code that the user inputted. Now this is going to come from the code input. Notice again the IntelliSense, and we want to get the value of that input. So whatever JavaScript snippet they paste in here, we want to get a reference to that, and then we want to send that off to our backend. Now we could do some additional checking for something like if there is no code, do something or don't call backend. Like you could add whatever logic or whatever you want in here. We'll kind of just skip that for now, but you could add some additional logic to make sure you're not wasting a call to your backend if the user didn't actually input any code. Now here's where the fun starts. Now we want to call. So we'll do res. We'll say we want to await, which means this needs to be async. We want to call the backend. And so we can just type in the function that we want to call. So explain JavaScript code and then pass in that code. Now, where does this function come from? Well, we can import this directly inside of our JavaScript. So inside of here, we can import this function. So explain JavaScript code, and we can import this from backend and then our AI file. So this is that really tight, neat integration of writing code in your backend, but being able to call that function directly from your front end. And they must do some sort of like fetch request or things behind the scenes, but it just takes care of all that for us, which is really, really neat. Now from here, after we get that response, we want to update the button. So we want to say we enable the button now, and then we can reset the text of the button to explain this JavaScript. All right, so that is reset. And then lastly, most importantly, we want to take the results text. We want to set the text to the response that comes back. So this should, in theory, be all connected now to go from front end to back end, talk to ChatGPT or talk to OpenAI to get that response back, and then come back and let us display that on the screen by showing the results text. So fingers crossed, all things are good. Let's go ahead and send this into a preview. So this is going to open up like a semi-deployed or just a preview version of the site. Has a developer console in here. I can hide this. And let's just say we run a log of hello world and click explain this JavaScript. Notice we get our disable, we get our loading text. This is going to take, a second or two, but we actually get our response back. So this is the output is hello world. This is because console log prints the argument passed to it, to the JavaScript console. And this hello world is passed, which is why it prints on the screen. So this actually is working out really, really well. And we can try this with maybe a more in-depth example. Let me see if I can go back to a snippet that I had up earlier. So here's a good example. A very standard challenge with JavaScript and something people struggle with asynchronous JavaScript is the idea of the set timeout with a time of 0. So you log 1, you call set timeout with a time of 0, that the callback function logs 2, and then you have the log of 3. So what's the order of these? Pause if you don't know the answer and think about why also if you don't know the answer. But let's see if it can handle this one, which is a little bit trickier. Oh, it is trickier because the first one was basic hello world. So this is actually correct. The output would be 1 and then 3 and then 2. And it talks about the idea that the set timeout method executes a given function after a certain amount of time, which means it's going to invoke those other logs before it comes back and triggers the set timeout. So all things considered, that is working really, really well. Now, from our edit site, we can actually publish this. So we can publish this, and I'm going to typo this a little bit seemingly. So I'm going to do JavaScript explained without an E. I think I did JavaScript explained before. So you get a free editor X domain. So it'll be editorx.io/JavaScript explained without an E in this case. So save and continue. This will actually deploy this thing out to the real world. And so if you're I don't know if I'll leave this up long term because I don't want people like spamming my tokens, but this URL is actually here. I'll probably just disable the ability to submit for now so that I don't spend a bunch of money on you spamming my thing, but at least it is deployed out there for anyone to use. So that is really cool, but I want to show like a next level integration here as a developer, because although we have access to do a bunch of code type stuff in here, what's better as a developer than being able to write code in your own editor? And if you've watched anything on my channel, you know I'm a huge fan of VS Code. So you can do exactly that. So this is really cool. So what we can do, let me close out my other tabs. I think I've got a bunch of these open, obviously. There's all my history of tabs. But let's go in and look at the GitHub integration. So GitHub integration, this will walk us through everything we need to create a GitHub project, to pull it down locally, to interact with it, and then be able to push this stuff back up to Wix. So let's continue on this. We'll sign into GitHub. I should be already signed in. So I think this will go ahead and be good. Say, all right, what's the repository name? They're going to create that for me. And then it's going to install a Velo application for that repository so that we can do this automatic connection. And here's authentication code. So I'll just kind of fast forward through this part so I can get authenticated in here. All right, so I'm good in here. And then we're only adding this to select repositories. So we specifically want to add it to the JavaScript explained one. You can see I've done a few of these tests in the past. So this will finish up and now our workflow is going to be a little bit different. We'll see this in a second, but I'm going to open up VS Code and we'll kind of follow through these steps to be able to run this stuff locally. All right, so the first step is to install the Wix CLI. So I've already got this installed. So this will go ahead and run and install. And then they have a clone command that you can run and then an npm install script. Now, the clone command that they give you is if you have SSH keys already set up, which I do not. So what I'm going to do is actually find the non-SSH key URL and use that. So I'm just going to come into code, copy this little button, and then we are going to cd into whatever directory you want to use and do a git clone of that repo. I'm then going to open that up inside of VS Code. And from there, before we look at the code, let's do an npm install. So the most important thing, most relevant thing that we care about in here is we have similar setup to what we had inside of the Wix and Velo dashboard. Is we have our backend code, and you can see all the code that we've written already inside of here. Now, the cool thing about this is we will also get all the IntelliSense that comes from VS Code. So as we call the OpenAI thing that we created, we can now see all the different images, or not images, I read image as I was talking, all the different functions and properties and stuff that we can call. So we're right here in the home of our own editor, which is really cool. Now, what's also interesting, I'm going to undo that tiny change that I made, is that now that we're working in this kind of developer workflow, the code inside of here is read-only. So if you see I'm trying to type in here, it says you can't edit, this is read-only. That's because this enables me to write code locally and then run this locally. So with the Wix CLI installed, we can run Wix dev. And what this is going to do is it's going to take all the different metadata that it has about the site, including the JavaScript code, and it's going to run this stuff locally in a local editor. So this is going to load up. You'll get a very similar experience, but this is me just testing locally in isolation before I push stuff up to like the central thing that's actually stored in Wix. All right, so that has loaded up. I could come in and start to change things about the text in here. So if I said explain 'D, whatever. And then remember I mentioned that this was read-only code. Let's open up home in here. Let's say I wanted to add a log at the beginning of this. So what's cool is if I come and log hello world and save this file, it's going to sync those changes automatically. So like if I wanted to come into the dashboard and just see the code, spot check it there, I can see that those changes are being propagated. Now the difference though is that these changes aren't being pushed back to kind of what's actually stored inside of centralized Wix in the cloud based on the GitHub repository. So one of the things that we can do now is just treat this like a GitHub repository workflow. So we can do a git status. We can see, hey, we've changed the package lock, and then we added a log to the home. So we can say git add star, if I know how to type, git add star, and then git commit added extra log. And then go ahead and push this up. And so now when we come back, I terminated the local running one, but now when we come back, this will automatically synchronize with the latest commits from our code. And if we come up to the top, we see that hello world has been deployed as well. So that's great. It also, once we publish this, we'll see that the UI changes will take place as well. So we have Wix tied to our GitHub repository, but now there's the difference of what's actually like deployed. So even though in the Wix dashboard, I can see what's connected to my GitHub repo, we still haven't actually published our site. So we did this earlier where we can hit the publish button up here. We can also do this from our CLI. So from the Wix CLI, we can call Wix publish. And then it's going to ask us, do you want to publish from the remote repository, which is your main branch in this case, or do you want to publish from your local code? In this case, I'll publish from the remote repository. Again, very sticking to the developer workflow and it's saying I've got some newer design changes, that's okay. I'll go ahead and publish this from the main. And then what I want to see is when we open up the existing site, I want to see that this change has actually taken place. So since we've pushed those changes, we should go to view publish site and see that this little UI thing has changed. And now that again is out there for anybody to go and see. So a really neat workflow to be able to tie in the powerful visual editor of Wix. You get all the visual things to drag and drop, and you get logos and stuff that you can search through, edit all your text, to be able to pair that with the GitHub workflow that we're used to, like as developers being able to work in the code that we're used to. And I think the IntelliSense and stuff that you get for working with your DOM elements with this jQuery syntax, really, really nice. So all in all, we're able to build a full stack application that then integrates on the back end with AI, and the OpenAI API is really, really neat. And that's one of the cool things for me, I think, about the power of an AI API, it's kind of difficult to say, is now you have the ability to kind of build any idea you have on top of the underlying core functionality. And that's kind of the epitome of being a developer, is we have the ability to go and build stuff. And these are just more tools that enable us to build more, faster, and better. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope maybe you have an idea of some fun use cases or like beneficial use cases of AI. And then also maybe got a different side of Wix that you hadn't seen before. If you were used to the idea of it just being a drag and drop, no code website builder, now you can really think of it as a development platform to build full stack applications, which is really neat. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.